Thanks for waiting. We are allocating. Yeah, just don't listen to any of that. There we go. Let me just fix this for you. Get all the technical. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome again to the great Canadian Bro Show. This is the first iteration of the Canadian Bro Show. My co-host and partner in crime and friend of over 50 years, Mr. Johnny Leister, is, and we're joined by a very special guest, Bobby Nash, who I'll get into after the introduction. My name is Paul Bale. I'm the founder and host of the Canadian Bro Show. And essentially, the first iteration is all things or most things Canadian. We like to talk about Canadian culture, pop culture, talk about North America, talk about the Western Hemisphere, because we're all attached, and it's a phenomenal location in this world. And Canada, of course, is and America is just an incredible couple of countries, and we're really happy to have the freedom that we do, and hopefully it continues. And that's all we're going to go on that. But thanks again for Bobby to join us. And the second iteration is something that we've done 20 episodes, and is all basketball from the Hoop Junkies, PAULY and Raleigh. And the third iteration, which I'll be going into, is going to be all Canadian real estate with Paul Bale and guests. And essentially what I've done with this Canadian Bro Show at the Canadian Bro Show is to be able to do three of my favorite things most and talk about them as freely as possible and invite people on and do interview series and showcase other people's talents and experience. And everybody's in the same game. Everybody wants to showcase their abilities. Some don't, some more than others. But in the meantime, we're extremely pleased, and I'm very happy to say that in the first iteration, this is episode 35. And we are extremely happy. We've been talking about, Johnny and I have been talking about, Bobby, I don't think he knows about this, the exclusive entertaining episode 35, eh? It's the premier interview series. This would be number 6 with the prolific, talented, award-winning, published writer, actor / Mr. Everything, Mr. Bobby Nash.
Woohoo!
Most things Canadian with Pauly and Johnny. Bobby, how you doing?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me, guys. This is fun.
The Canadian Bro Show ship. All aboard. Shall we get it on?
Yeah. So Johnny's my co-host of the most. Johnny's a writer. I'm a part-time writer. Bobby's a full-time writer. Johnny's full-time as well. But we're going to get into that. And I would like to, Johnny, if you don't mind taking over as the co-host of the Canadian Bro Show, and let's get this show going. Let's hear what Bobby's got. He's a very entertaining chap. You're going to love this. It's great.
Okay. Well, you've probably been asked these questions a million times before, but I might have one or two that might surprise you. Okay, we'll see.
Nice. That's always nice when that happens. Yep.
Johnny, only one or two, bro? Come on.
Well, 1 or 200 maybe. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. When did you realize that you wanted to be a writer? Was there a pivotal moment?
When the realization hit me that I was never going to be a comic book artist for a living.
Yeah, same thing. I wanted to be a comic book artist too when I was a boy.
Me too.
Yeah,
I love drawing.
I wanted to. I still love to draw. I still draw, but
you're good at it.
I'm not. But I don't. I'm not quite there when it comes to doing actual comic book pages, the storytelling.
Gotcha.
My art is lacking. But that was the dream. That's what I wanted. And I started writing to have stuff to draw. Right. And then after, things happened after that where I ended up, writing for other people who were artists who wanted to do comics. And so they started having me write for them.
You mean like high school friends?
High school, and then after high school and college. Yeah, wow. There were other writers, or there were other artists who were like, hey, can you write some stuff for me with my characters? And so that's kind of how I started. And eventually I was able to get work for a company doing comics.
Wow. As an artist? As a
writer.
Okay.
Because when I started, this was in the late 80s, early 90s, the do-it-yourself like is available today wasn't really an option. So, so in the 90s, I found work with some small press publishers, and so I did some that way. And then, I would do comics on and off. I still write comics today.
Yeah.
But they're fun. But that was how I got my start. And then,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's great. So who were your favorite authors as a boy? Like, who was your first? Like, for me, it was Stan Lee. Like, when I
Yeah.
was in comics as a kid, anytime I opened an issue I saw written by Stan Lee, I knew that I was going to enjoy that story. So who was your first
Mhm.
favorite author as a boy?
The first comic book writer who I recognized, the first 4 or 5 books that I ever read, comic books, were all written by Marv Wolfman.
Right, right.
So I just assumed Marv Wolfman wrote them all. It took me a little while to realize that was not the case. But so Marv Wolfman was probably the first comic writer, that I recognized the name. And then, but growing up, I loved things like Encyclopedia Brown. Uh,
How about the Hardy Boys?
Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
My mother used to get these things called the Reader's Digest that
Right.
Oh
had
my
like a
God.
bunch of
Yeah.
novels, and
Yeah.
so
I,
I read stuff that way.
I read those every
Yeah.
single month
Remember the
for
little big books? Those really
30.
Yes,
fat.
No,
yep,
no,
I
the
love.
smaller,
Those
wow, the
that was
smaller ones,
amazing.
because my grandparents had them. Man, the Reader's Digest was
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah. Now,
yeah.
did you? When I was a kid growing up in the '70s, I felt like a total weirdo. Like I felt very stigmatized and kind of pushed aside. Did you have this experience when you were a boy? Because you were in
Oh
the
yeah,
comic.
yeah. Everybody made fun of you
Yeah.
for liking comic. It's so funny when, like, people I went to high school with in the last 10, 12 years or so, because of all the superhero movies and stuff, I've got people that used to laugh at me
Yeah.
for
Isn't that
liking,
funny?
will come to me and ask
Yeah.
questions about characters. And I was like, well, this stuff was cool back then too.
It was. It was
uh,
always cool. We were just
yeah.
ahead of the curve.
But I knew
Right?
that comics had become mainstream when my mother called me one day and she goes, "Okay, explain this Thor guy to me."
Oh, from The Simpsons, comic book guy.
Yeah, yeah. It's just,
Okay.
No, she
but
said
yes,
he said
Thor,
Thor.
Thor, Thor. Yeah,
She was
not a
interested
thunder.
in it,
Under.
the hammer of war. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
It's
It was.
amazing.
She had no interest in reading the comics. She
No.
was just curious about the guy in the movies. But
Yeah, she's like,
Yeah.
who is this hot as Icelandic chap?
Yeah. Well, that's
yeah,
why she was interested, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what the
yeah.
character more
So
more than that.
yeah, but I had to explain to her
Well,
who Thor was and what he did.
that's
Cool.
But
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Did you
So
have Did you have friends who liked comics, or were
I
you?
did, I
Yeah. Oh,
did.
that's nice.
Well, not at first. When we moved, I was 13 when we moved, and I didn't have any friends before that read comics.
Mm.
I had a cousin that stayed with us one summer, and he read comics, but that was it. I didn't know any other have any other friends that read comics. But when we moved, I was 13 when we moved, and the first group of guys I met at the new school were all into comics.
Oh, that's great. Lucky
And
you.
so I made those friends, and they introduced me to comics I'd never heard of.
And
Right.
and
You
what
know,
year was this approximately, Bobby?
1983.
That's
Okay.
about right, Johnny.
What year we
That's about
Yeah,
graduated.
right.
So we're
and
about the same generation, pretty
I
yeah.
close.
think I
So
think we might be a little bit older, Johnny.
We're a little longer in the tooth than Bobby is.
Yeah.
A little bit. Maybe not.
once you reach a certain age, once we reached 50, it's all relative.
Oh, pretty
That's
much
true.
the same.
Yeah, but yes, but I met those guys, and they introduced me to comics I had never heard of. That's where I was introduced to the X-Men
Oh, sweet.
and Daredevil and the Teen
Yeah.
Titans and things like that.
Oh, I was fanatical about X. The whole Dark Phoenix storyline by Chris
Yeah,
Claremont. Yeah, I actually
yeah.
met Claremont at a convention
The,
when I
the
was 12.
first X-Men I read was it was Chris Claremont and Paul Smith. It's got a very famous cover with Wolverine and Rogue on the cover with just a
I know
black
it. I
background.
can picture it in my mind's eye.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when they're in Japan and they're
And
looking for
John Byrne was Canadian, and when he
yes,
took over from Dave Cockrum, that series just exploded.
yeah,
But
Like
this
that's
is what I love about this show, man. Listen to you
Yeah.
guys. This is like a bromance.
No,
It's been brewing for so long, and here it
yeah,
is.
I could do this for like 12 hours. I
yeah.
just well, we need to have you back. We need to like do a saga, the Bobby Nash
We
saga.
will. No, we'll do a series. We'll do a series if there's ongoing.
Or we could do like another iteration and just talk about this stuff because I
Yeah.
love talking about this stuff.
Oh, I grew up. Yeah, because
If
I grew
Bobby
up
wants
reading
to
all
join
that stuff.
us, he's welcome. You know what I'm
Yes,
Tell
saying?
us, Bobby.
I love my comic. I love my comic stuff.
Oh,
That's
same
yeah.
here. They're great. They always have
Yeah.
been, always will be. Tell us about your first professional sale.
My first
First
professional
time you got
title.
paid to write a story.
First time I got paid. The very first thing I ever got paid for was actually comics. I wrote and drew a comic strip for a kids magazine,
Oh, sweet.
where it was just one comic strip a month. But I did that for 12 years. That was my first paid gig. But the first paid writing gig, I was hired by a comic publisher in 2000. I took over the scripting job on a book called Demon Slayer. The writer who was there before was leaving, and the artist owned the character. So the artist would plot it, and then I would write the script. Like
Oh,
he would
nice.
send me.
Like
So
the Marvel method. That's
yeah,
outstanding.
so he would plot it. He
Collaborate.
would send me. He would email me pages of art, and we would get on the phone, and he would tell me what his thought
That's awesome.
process, and then I would script it from there. And then after doing that for a short time, the publisher then hired me to write some other stuff. So my first comics were for that publisher that I was paid for, and my first short story I did for that same publisher and got paid for. So
That's amazing. So this is a dumb question, but you have a literary agent, right?
I do not.
You do not.
I
Okay,
do
so is it
I
something
can't
that
get
you-
one. I've tried. I
Yeah.
can't get one.
I have
Okay,
two when I
I got to
started.
interject. I got to interject because this is exactly what I was hoping Johnny would get into, and the fact that you hit this on the third question is fantastic. Because
I
this
like
is
to be all happy.
this is no. I mean, for those that don't understand,
I'm epic, man.
I'm serious. It's go ahead, please, because
Okay.
I'm enthralled.
Tell us about Abraham Snow. Let's talk about your characters. Let's start with Abraham Snow. Who is this dude?
Let's talk about agents.
Well, you want to talk about the agent first?
Well,
Yeah.
let's do that first, and then we'll get into your character.
I do not have an agent. I have tried over the years. I have had no success with finding an agent willing to represent me. I have over 200 published credits, and I have had agents in recent years tell me I'm not sellable.
Oh, well, they're
And
wrong.
did they share with you exactly why
How many
they
times
thought?
did George Lucas hear you
No.
out, right?
Yeah.
Before he's trying to sell Star Wars,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, they don't share anything with any details. But what it generally probably means is they don't have contacts that publish what I write.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's an agent out there that would be perfect for me. I just haven't found them. And after a while, I just quit looking. I work for what having an agent. Not having an agent has really just kept me from working for the biggest publishers, which are 4 of them. So I can get work with mid-level publishers without an agent, and so that's just where I live.
Okay, terrific. Okay,
Yeah.
let's get into some of your characters. Let's start with Mr. Abraham Snow. Who is this guy?
Yeah, Snow.
There he
here.
is.
Snow is an action adventure series. I describe it to people as it's my love letter to cop and PI and detective shows and books from the 70s and 80s.
Awesome.
It's got that it's more character based than plot based.
Okay.
It's all about the characters and what kind of trouble they're getting into and getting to know them. There's a lot of Magnum PI and Rockford Files feel to the way the books work.
Is he a private investigator?
He is. He was a former guy. He was when the series picks up. He's working undercover as a government employee. He's law enforcement. He's undercover. In the opening chapter to the first book, his identity is discovered, and he is shot and left for dead. Obviously, he doesn't die, because it would be a very short series. But he is retired as a result of his injuries. So he comes back to the States where he lives, and tries to re-enter his life, and still finds himself getting into troubles trying to help people, and still trying to find the person who shot him. And so there's a lot of that. And so he does eventually he does become a private investigator and takes some clients, and his family also runs a security business, so he does stuff with them. And then he gets into other trouble on his own, like I said, like those old shows of the 70s. A lot of times the trouble is because one of their friends is causing the trouble. Their friends that get them in trouble.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I love that, but it's fun. The characters are great fun.
If I may, If I
Sorry,
may,
go ahead,
Johnny,
Paul. Sorry,
quick
yes, ma'am.
interjection. No, it's just because
Go ahead.
after what he's been sharing, what Bobby's been sharing is so synonymous and similar to you. So, Bobby, can we switch around the interview for a second and
Sure.
ask Johnny what his primary um, writing experience is, and let him give you exactly what you just shared with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk
Well,
about me, my
yeah,
favorite topic.
yes.
Okay, well,
Well,
as you aware, I primarily
Well,
write
let
content
just
like myself.
is Bobby already aware of that? Let him ask.
Oh yeah.
well, I
Oh
know
good.
he writes Hacklin. As I
Right.
read, I see
You
those
know
on.
Lee. Okay.
Yep, Lee Hacklin. So I know I see those
Cool.
on. He posts those on social media, and so
Cool.
I've read
I just
those.
wanted to clarify.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
So
I
yeah.
uh, I finished another one today. This one's called the A Team, and A is spelled EH because they're a team of Canadian. They're very polite. They're very polite and friendly Canadian bank robbers.
Oh, I
And
love
I
it.
finished that one today, and then I uploaded another one to Draft to Digital called Air Supply, and it's air. I love punny titles, and this one is Air as an heir to the throne. And yeah, I mean, I wrote a bunch of short stories when I was a security guard in 2005, and then I just made hard copies and I just shoved them in my bedroom and they collected dust for 20 years. And then one day I just hit a wall of spending way too much time by myself and having no ambition, even though I'd read all the self-help books. And I dusted off these short stories. I thought, you know what, these are not the worst things I've ever read. And so that was the beginning. And then reaching out to people like yourself and being inspired by people like yourself, and the high bar that you set for late bloomers like myself. And I've discovered since 2019, here's my latest notebook, that every time I open my notebook, every single time, like writer's block, it's never doesn't happen. I don't claim to be good at it. I just know that I can do it and that I was meant to do with my life. So my boy Lee, maybe like your boy Abraham Snow and Tom Myers, and I know you have many other characters, he's basically a much cooler and handsomer and suaver and more debonair and wittier, far wittier version of myself. And do you feel, let me ask you this, Bobby, it's not in my notebook, do you find writing to be therapeutic? Because I sure do.
Sometimes, yeah. There have been times where I've worked out issues by giving
Yeah,
one of my
same here.
characters those issues.
Like, this is the way I wanted things to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Certainly, I've put them in situations that where my characters have a better chance of having a better situation
Outcome.
than I had, or a
Yeah.
better experience doing this. But my characters too. People laugh when I say it, but my characters are smarter than I am. They they
Kind of
take
what
over.
we want, right?
Yeah, they take over. They get in your head. They stop become characters at one point and they become real.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure
right.
you get that way with
Not to be too self-aggrandizing, but writers are gods. We're creating our own worlds. We're creating
yeah.
our own universes.
We create all these things that then don't listen to us.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, because that's my characters. Because people will say, well, I'll talk about how, well, I had this plan, but the characters decided to do this, and they're like, "You're writing it. Can't you make them do what you want?" And I was like, "That's not how this works."
Right.
But and you don't want it to, because once those characters reach that level in your head and they will make those decisions, you get better stories
Right.
by following the characters, because then they feel in character.
Right.
And you get a lot of cooler things happen as a result. And so so it's fun. I love doing it. I love all of that. I love creating the characters. I love getting in their heads, finding out what makes them tick, and then putting them through hell.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, are you familiar with the writer named Brian Michael Bendis?
Yes.
I read an interview with him, and he wrote that it's always good to put your character in a place that they want to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
The place that they don't want to be. That's kind of the key component of writing.
Yeah, because you fall in love with your characters, and you don't really want bad things to happen to them.
Right.
But if nothing bad happens to them, your stories are boring.
Exactly.
So there's always somebody trying to kill Snow, or
Now, when you write your characters, like for me, when I write Lee, I always have Jan Michael Vincent in my mind's eye. So do you have a particular actor in your mind's eye when you're writing these characters?
Good question.
I try not to.
Okay.
When I first created Snow,
So Bobby, it wasn't a younger version of you when you had darker hair?
No. Actually, when I was first starting it, when I first started creating it, in my head as I was writing it, there's an actor that did pop into my head who I patterned it just a little of his look. I just blanked on his name.
It'll come
What's
back to you.
he played on? He was the lead on Stargate Atlantis. Joe Flanagan.
Okay.
Thought
Oh,
of him because I had written something about Snow's hair because as when I was a kid you couldn't keep my hair combed. It doesn't even do it now, but you could. My hair was just wild and all over the place.
I call it I call it Christopher Walken hair.
Yeah, yeah. And so I described the character that way, and he was the first person that popped into my head because his hair did that. And so early days, the thought of that, but then I try to get away from that. I try not to do that too much because my problem is if I start thinking of the character in terms of an actor, should the day come where somebody comes calling and wants to make a movie or a TV show, I don't want to be disappointed that they can't get the person that's in my head.
Yeah.
And there could be many reasons for that because, the age difference, to me, that character is still that age, even though in real life he has aged 20 something years since,
Right.
so I try not to do that, but every once in a while I'll think of actor types. It's like it's a Christopher Walken type.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that gives you, and that's more not so much what they look like, but in terms of how they act, how they talk.
Your demeanor.
Yeah, because if you say it's a Christopher Walken type, we all know what that guy is.
Right.
And so
Okay.
yes, and that helps too when I'm describing the characters to the cover artist. The cover artist will then be able
Your
to.
covers are amazing. Who designs your covers? They're really glorious.
Yeah, these are done by Jeffrey Hayes from Plasma
Great.
Fire Graphics.
Wow.
Yeah, he does a fantastic job on
Yeah.
these.
They're
And,
really nice. Really
yeah.
nice.
but he does, yeah, because he does the Snow and the Sheriff Myers.
Fantastic.
That's just this poster is a compilation of all the books that are in the stories that are in the first 6 books. The Sheriff Myers, that's book 2's cover. Yeah. And then he also does the horror westerns that I do for Valhalla Books. They're smaller up there. He does those as well. And I actually did Evil Ways. So
Oh, wow.
except for the blood spatter. Mark Maddox did that for me, but I did.
I really like the Evil Ways one. I can't keep my eyes off it. It's kind of like it's hard to not look at it.
Yeah.
That was thank you. That was my first novel. And I sold it to a small publisher. This was not the cover they used.
So did you just email your stuff, or did you send it in the mail back in the day, or?
Back in the day, it was in the mail. This was I sold Evil Ways in 2004, and back then you said to mail stuff. And so the book came out, and it had a horrible cover. It was it was brown with pink and tan polka dots on it. And Evil Ways in small letters. It was horrible.
Oh, okay.
When my contract ended, because I signed a 7-year contract. When I got the rights back, I shopped it around, but I couldn't find another publisher that worked. So that was the first book I published myself, was Evil Ways, once I got the rights back. This is the 3rd version of the cover. I did a new cover when that happened, and I liked it. And then I did this cover after the book had been out 10 years. And I said, I'm going to do a special. I decided to do a hardcover. So this was going to be just the hardcover cover. But I liked this so much, it became the cover for all of it.
Yeah.
Now Pauly and I, we grew up watching, one of our all-time favorite shows was The Night Stalker with Darren McGavin.
Oh,
Now,
love it.
you've actually written.
I have written.
Explain to me how you get to do this. How do you get to write these legendary characters? How does that happen? Do you reach out to these people who own the characters, or do they come to you?
Mostly they come to you. Usually you have to have a relationship with the publisher who has got the license. So what happens is the publisher.
Just out of curiosity, when you say relationship, is that quite broad in definition?
They have to know who you are. Or you've worked with them.
I can't help myself.
Yeah. I'm hearing porn music now.
What happens is publishers will go and say a publisher decides that they want to do Carl Kolchak stories, The Night Stalker. So they will go to the people that own the character, and they will pay a licensing fee. What Well, they have to pitch it first. I mean, the people that own the character have to approve it, and
Is it like the
then
family? Like,
is it
is
like what? I'm sorry.
it like the family that owns the character of the original
Uh,
creator?
Sometimes, but most of the time, it's the publisher that owns the
Gotcha,
character
gotcha. Okay.
Exactly.
or the
Go ahead.
entity. In terms of Kolchak, I believe it is the family. But like if you do like doing Zorro, there is a company called Zorro Productions Incorporated that owns Zorro.
Wow.
And so a publisher goes to those companies and says, "We would like to license the character. We're going to do these books." And they give them the ideas for the books, tell them what they're going to do. If the rights holder agrees and thinks it's good, then the publisher pays a licensing fee and gets permission to use those characters for a period of time.
Gotcha.
Then the publisher goes and hires the talent to work on those books. A lot of times when doing those media tie-in things like that, there are extra steps. Like if you just go to a publisher and show them your work, if the publisher likes it, then you're hired. With the tie-ins, the publisher has to approve it. Then it has to go to the people that own it, and they have to approve it because their job is to protect the character.
Right.
They don't want you doing any. So part of the reason that they don't just let anybody just apply to write these characters, they go to people that have written tie-in stuff because there's a lot of rules.
Gotcha. Yeah, they don't want to see Kolchak as a cross-dresser, right?
Right. Well, and there's like
Johnny, where'd you pull that out?
You don't want to know.
like well, yeah, he's reading something in the library there.
No, he had a pink tutu on and he was hammered. He just finished a 2-4 of KFC.
Yeah, but yeah, you can't do
anything.
Yeah, you can't do anything that fundamentally changes.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's like I explain it like this. This is how it is writing those type of characters that you don't own or you didn't create.
It's and the reader has an expectation of what the character is going to be. They don't want something that's radically different. That's why I hate it when people complain about fan service. Like people dumped all over the Rise of Skywalker. They call it fan service. It's like, no, I want fan service. When I order McDonald's hamburger, I want a McDonald's hamburger, right?
Right. Because it's a fine line to walk. Because it's like we want something new, but we want it to be just like what we know.
Want something good.
Yeah. So
nice analogy there, Johnny, with the McDonald's.
Yeah, and so you go through and you have to. So having done a lot of them now, I know what kind of stories not to pitch them. But I always explain it this way. It's like writing tie-in characters is like Star Trek, the original series Star Trek. Almost every episode started with them on the bridge of the Enterprise. The Enterprise is flying through space. Some stuff happens. They have to solve a problem. And at the end of the episode, the Enterprise is flying through space. They're on the bridge and everybody's happy. It starts, you return the toys, you find them and return them the same way. Everything I would do in a media tie-in is what happens in the middle.
There's a default position.
Yeah, I can bend the characters. I can do all kinds of stuff to them, but I can't break them. I have to return them the way I found them. So you can't you can't have Kolchak lose an arm.
Right.
You don't want them getting married and, having someone die. Those are things those become big moments. And unless the people that own the character come to you and say, I want you to do a story where you kill Kolchak, that's not up to me. It's just a hired writer to pitch that story. So you're just telling, if you're doing a TV show, you're just doing another episode. Or if you're writing a book, you're just doing another chapter in that guy's life.
Bobby, I got to say that was really eloquently.
Well said.
I've told that story a lot.
Yeah, I could tell because that thing is concise.
Okay, Abraham Snow, the movie, your dream director.
Ooh, I don't know.
No, who? First of all, who's Snow?
Snow. Yeah, Snow is the do-gooder, the guy that used to be undercover.
Right, but who is he? Like really? Like, give us an idea who Snow could be if it happened.
Oh, like an actor?
Yeah.
No, I have no idea.
Nothing comes into your and all the time you've been writing Snow.
No, because I try not to because I don't want.
You said that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get I don't want them to be tied to an actor because I will
Right.
never that will never
Okay,
happen.
so
And
not necessarily an actor, but certainly a visual vision of
well,
that
I'd hope he
character.
looks something like that.
I'm I'm
um,
I'm thinking a young Jason
yeah,
Isaacs when I
yes,
saw
yeah,
that
yeah.
for the first
So
time.
yeah, so yes, he would be. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know of an actor, and I've never really thought about directors either. I mean, it would have to
No,
be somebody that's
like
good with.
for me, it'd be Quentin Tarantino because most of my stories are set in
Yeah,
the '70s.
yeah. I would think it would have to be somebody that would be good at doing action and thrillers because there's a lot of thriller elements to it, and it would have to be somebody that could handle the action but still do those character moments.
Right, right.
So, is there
Yeah.
example, Bobby, of something you saw of that genre that really captured your imagination?
I'm sure there is. I do love good thriller movies.
Do you remember the Do you remember the film? It was for a Tom Hanks film. It was very unusual, and that he walked around with the Tommy gun and
So, Road to
multiple.
Perdition.
Yeah,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
it was massively violent, and
Hmm.
and
Based
and
on
Bruce
Max,
comic book.
Max
and
Allan Collins wrote the
and
Yeah,
novel.
based on
yes,
comic
yes, and Bruce Willis did another version
book. Hmm.
of one that was just as nasty, if not more. And there,
Yeah,
that the kill count was over 300, I think.
yeah. And I love a good thriller. I mean, I grew up on the Clint Eastwood thrillers and
Yeah, so
stuff
did
like
we.
that. I love and TV, TV thrillers. I'm loving Bosch, which is on Amazon now.
Okay.
Those are good. I love those novels as well. Those are good thriller novels.
Bobby, you're talking to two chaps that don't have cable.
Ah, well, the novels are incredible. The Bosch novels that the show is based on are incredible.
Johnny,
And so,
grab one
yeah,
on the way out from after the show's finished from the library, man.
yeah,
I'd
there's
like
about
to
20
know.
something up. So yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry to interject. I'd like to know, Bobby, about your writing process because I've been a guest on other podcasts who are writers, who are the hosts of writers, and many of them they plot everything out in advance. Which is
yeah.
fine, different strokes and all that. But I feel that takes. I just open my notebook and I just start with a general idea, and it's like stream of consciousness. Or do you do? Is it a little bit of both for you, or do you plot in advance?
I'm somewhere in the middle. I have loose ideas. I know I call them signposts when I explain them, but it's like I know these five things have to happen in this story. Boom, 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 boom. Those things have to happen. I know my characters, and like I mentioned earlier, once you know your characters, you know how they act and you know what they
Right.
do. And I'll say, okay, it's like if I'm writing a snow book, it's like, okay, Snow, we've got to get to signpost number one. How do we get there? And then I let Snow, the character, dictate. Because some characters go straight at something, some guys go over here and take the long way around. There's all those kind of things. So I let the character get me to where I'm going, and sometimes that's where I find my surprises, the character moments, the things like that I wasn't expecting. And so yeah, so I do it that way. I don't outline. Like I said, very loose plots. I've tried outlining; it doesn't work for me
Yeah.
because once I do the outline and then I go to write the book, I'm ready to move on because I feel like I've already written this story.
Gotcha.
So for me, it's more of a I know I know the I know the plot I'm telling, but then I tell the character to help me write the story when you put the plot and the character together. And so
Gotcha.
that's where it becomes interesting.
Okay.
There's a great writing there's a great writing I'm blanking on the words here. Sorry, this is terrible.
No, it's all good.
There's a great writing exercise
You're killing it,
where,
Bobby. You're killing it.
where, where if you take a really simple basic plot and you drop three different characters into that same plot, you will get three different stories because if you trust the character and keep the characters in character, they might respond differently to the problem you drop them in.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and I always love that idea. It's like, what does the character focus on? Like if your goal is you've got to get through that door, you know, one
Right.
character is going to like pick the lock and go in carefully. One character is going to kick the door open.
Right,
One's
right.
going to go, I'm going to go outside and go around the building. And, you know,
That analogy is just beautiful because it right away it just clicked with me about being when I was playing professional basketball 25 years ago. I was a point guard, and I was the coach on the floor. I
mhm,
was leading the offense. I was leading the rest of my teammates. I was following through with the game plan. And to me, that sounds so synonymous with the character, your lead character,
Mhm.
that you're relying on to take you through this journey
Right,
that you've
because
created.
you as the coach know your players' strengths.
Yeah.
So
And
you don't
weaknesses.
Yeah, and so you don't give them each the same task.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so
That's why I
depending on
said the point guard, because
yeah,
that they're running the show.
right. And so so then your character will determine, because we've all read or watched movies or read books and go, it feels so out of character.
Right.
And that's because the writer has forced the character to do something they wouldn't normally do. And so as a writer, I try to be very conscious of
Take you out of the story when it happens.
yeah, and not screw my character over by making them do something
Right.
Well,
that's
it's
out
like
of
you
character.
said in the beginning of the interview, you like Johnny always says, he's extremely malleable, but and you can do that with a character that's not yours.
And
But
it's easier,
you have to return that character to
right? Well, it's easier to do that with stuff like Snow and Sheriff Myers because I own those.
that's
Those are
yours.
mine.
Exactly.
When I'm doing Kolchak or Zorro or one of those guys,
You've done Green Hornet too, right?
yeah, Green Hornet.
Wow.
There's less flexibility there because you pretty much have to turn in a plot.
Yeah.
When I'm writing Snow, the plot's in my head, and is changeable. When I'm doing when I'm doing Zorro, I have to turn in a Zorro plot that gets approved by the publisher and the people that own Zorro. So when I go to write the story, I've got to stick to that plot.
Right.
Things can happen in the story, but I can't deviate from the plot without going back to them.
Certainly having a comic book background, that allows you an advantage in your writing.
So,
Are your books serialized? Like, can I just grab a Snow at random and read it, or is it
yes,
predetermined by what came
you
before?
can't. I make sure that the main plot of every book is wrapped up in that book.
Good, yeah.
There
okay.
are things that go through, like the search for who shot him goes through multiple books in the background.
Like Mulder looking for his sister on X-Files.
Right. But if you pick up book 3 and just read book 3 first, you're not lost.
Right.
I give you the information you need.
Because Stan Lee said every comic book is a kid's first.
Yeah.
That's
And
the back of the day. Characters are always explaining what happened in the previous issue.
Yeah.
Which always feel forced me after, but you can see why they did that. So the reader would
Great question, Johnny.
Yeah.
Great.
And as a reader, I hate getting to the end of a novel and seeing the words "to be continued."
Oh, yeah.
So I try to make sure that yes, the episode is wrapped up, or the story is wrapped up for that book. And then I usually put a little epilogue that leads you into the next book.
Yeah.
So if you read one and like it, here's a little thing that's going to tee up the next one. And hopefully, if you like that, you'll come back.
Right.
But yes, no, I try to make sure, I wrap up the main plot. There may be stuff that can carry over, but I want someone to pick up one book, read it, and feel satisfied.
That's awesome.
And then hopefully they'll come back, but they don't always. So,
Well, tell us a character that you have a desire to write, but have not written yet. Like for me, it would be Superman. I would absolutely take a shot at writing a Superman story. It would be something like the 1978 movie. Who's your character that you really want to write that you haven't written yet? If you had the opportunity.
I have three right off the top of my head: Captain America, Thor, and the Fantastic Four.
Oh, so you're a Marvel boy.
Yeah, those are three that are just in my head. Outside of that, I recently got to write Remo Williams, so he was on my bucket list.
I saw that. Oh, I lost my mind when I saw that. I love The Destroyer. I read those books when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. That was one of those bucket list characters. That one was on the list. Zorro and Green Hornet weren't on the list, but I've gotten to write them. I did get to write the Lone Ranger. He was kind of on the list. Kolchak was on the list.
That's cool.
In terms of novels, though, there's I think I've got at least one good Star Trek story in me. I've written the fan film stuff, but that's not official.
Didn't you write a rewrite of an episode that was not credited?
Well, I did
on Star Trek.
Yeah, it was a fan
rewrite.
Film. Yeah, well, Yeah,
How did you do a fan film called Farragut, right?
yeah, I did an episode of Starship Farragut, and then I did ghostwriting. I rewrote part of the script on Star Trek Continues, their first episode.
Oh wow.
But these are fan films. These guys built sets.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
Oh, the set.
are they set in the era of the original series?
Yeah. They built sets. Oh my God, they were
It's
gorgeous.
really, I mean, the
And
budget's pretty damn good,
yeah,
really.
and it's all fan made. So it's all people putting their own time and money
Yeah,
into
yeah.
it.
That's why it looks so
Um,
good, because everybody loves this stuff, right?
Yes. And so I did 2 of those for those guys. And then there's another group that I've done some for. It's all that same era, that original series and era, the Kirk Spock era. And so there's a few different people that do fan films, and they have their own characters. And, there's the Star Trek Continues did Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, but all the others are just doing, we're just another ship. And I do stuff for them occasionally. I did it for practice. I'm not good at trying stuff for no reason. And I've always wanted to write a script, but I couldn't bring myself to do it for no reason because I've got all these other deadlines.
Right.
So these give me reasons to write scripts. And so I'm practicing my script writing. I think I've written 5 or 6 at this point. And so it kind of helps with, because, scripts are more dialogue based than anything else.
Right,
and
right.
so I've learned a lot. But doing those, because there's no money in doing fan films. I mean, that's part of the reason they're fan films, is you can't make money off of them, or, the people that own Star Trek will.
We'll hear from the lawyers, right?
Yeah.
Can't you make money on the comm tour thing in conjunction with that a little bit?
No, you can bring in money to help pay for the wood and the whatever you're using. You can raise money to pay for that stuff. If anybody collects a salary, they will get you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So that's but it helped me. Doing those helped me get better at writing scripts, which then paid off later because I was hired by a producer over in the UK who do audio dramas. And so I've been hired to write several audio dramas, full cast audio
Are we
dramas.
talking Doctor Who?
It's not Doctor Who, no. I would do Doctor Who in a second. But I've done the first few I did.
Nice try, Johnny.
Yeah. I did pitch to that Doctor Who short trips thing a few times.
Oh, really?
Just didn't make it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I did the first few I did, I adapted some short stories that I had written into scripts for them. And then I did a snow one. For their 3rd season, they did one called Prequels. And they wanted a short, like 10, 15-minute thing that was a prequel to your book series. So I did a full cast audio that's the 15 minutes before Snow gets shot. And so they liked all those. And so last year they hired me to write a full length one. It's 80 minutes long.
Cool.
Wow.
And it'll come out later this year. They've recorded it. It's a sci-fi murder mystery.
Nice.
It takes place on, like, how you have cruise ships that are floating casinos. In space, they have a spaceship that's a floating casino.
Oh, like Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, and then there's a murder, and so the house detective has to solve the murder, and so he's going through. It's like a Vegas, if Vegas was a spaceship.
In the stars.
So cool.
Yes, and so that was fun, and so it's been recorded, and so it'll be out sometime this year. But they liked it enough. I'm writing one this year for next year, which is also kind of a futuristic. Yeah,
I love the idea. I love that genre. Like, Johnny and I are huge science fiction. I know you mentioned science fiction on some of your previous interviews and so on, and we have a lot of the same stuff. And that's why it's really fun doing this episode, because growing up, when I first met Johnny, I used to think that before I became an athlete, I was kind of a geek. I was kind of like I was
very well-rounded fellow.
Yeah, I was late 60s, early 70s, right? I mean, that's when I realized I love Slurpees and comics and television and the library and my bike. And it was essentially, that was my life.
Yeah. It was reading. Yeah, I was born in 71, so it was the early 70s when I first discovered comic books.
Yeah.
Probably 75, 76 as I'm getting
Yeah,
to
yeah,
the
yeah.
reading. But, it was also, the thing that really got me that made me interested in comic books was seeing the Spider-Man cartoon from the 60s. They would show it in
Oh
the afternoon.
man, eh?
Spider-Man,
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
It
And
was
so
so bad. It was
yeah,
so poorly done too,
It's
eh?
because it was made in Canada.
right. But back then you didn't care. It was just like, oh my God, this is cool.
Yeah, we
And
realized
so,
it's pretty cool when we were kids.
It's
yeah.
like
And
how
so,
does a spider web attach to the air
yeah.
4 feet off a
But,
building?
but
Wow.
what happened
I don't
so
think
I'm a
they
fan of,
to that
so
extent.
I'm a fan of the cartoon, and the very first comic books I owned, we were in a shopping center in the checkout aisle, and they used to do they put 3 of them in a plastic
Yeah, I remember
pack.
those. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they had Spider-Man comics. I didn't know Spider-Man comics existed,
No, there wasn't
and
much.
I begged my mother to because there's 2, you can't see what the third one is because it's in the
Right.
middle. But
Probably
it was
hard.
2, yeah, it was 2 Spider-Man comics. And so my mother relented, I think, just to shut me up. And I came home and there's 3 consecutive issues of Spider-Man.
Wow. There
Issues
you
It
go.
was issues 192, 193, and 194. I remember them well.
Wow.
And I fell in love with. That's when I fell in love with comics.
Do you
Right.
still have them?
I do still have them.
That's amazing.
Nice.
Yes, they are in a closet across the hall.
Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so well read. They're not worth anything.
Oh, okay.
No, I read my comics. I
don't. I have Star Wars. My claim to fame is I got Star Wars 1 to 15.
Yeah, they're in mint condition.
And in mint condition, never been read.
No, mine are all read. I collect because I like them. I don't collect because I think they'll be worth anything. I read them.
No, I do both. I collect them because I like them, and I collect them because if they are worth something, then that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Although I will, and I do admit in recent years, there's a lot of comics. I don't go back and reread them as often. I just buy a trade now. And so I have like a whole wall of trades over here of some of my favorite runs. So I don't have to go dig the comics out when I feel like reading one of them.
So one of our earlier episodes, Bobby, was with our old friend from Kitsilano back in the 60s, 70s, Keith Bickford, and he still works in a comic shop.
It's a neighborhood in Vancouver.
Yeah. And so we did episode 4 of the Canadian Bro Show, All Things Canadian. We interviewed. He was the first one of our interview series, and what an awesome guy! So many memories, and Johnny and him were pretty tight. We all lived like very close to each other and stuff. But he has over 60,000 comics.
Ooh, that's a lot.
In his home right now. Apparently, I'm not allowed to divulge where that location might be.
Yeah, we don't know who's listening. Bobby, I want to ask you this. Tell us the weirdest and wildest experience you've ever had at a convention.
Good question, Johnny.
I was at a convention in 1994. I saw Patrick Stewart, and there's a guy walking around with a huge model of the Enterprise on his head. Like this guy was a lethal weapon. It's a wonder he didn't decapitate anybody with a saucer set.
I remember the big con here in Georgia, in Atlanta, is Dragon Con, which is a huge con. And I mean, it's much bigger now than it was. And in the earlier days, it was still big, but we would sometimes have other conventions happening at the same time. And one year, while Dragon Con was going on, the same hotel booked a Red Cross convention. And I remember waiting for an elevator, and the elevator opened, and just the most surreal scene of, there was this guy who was, he was huge, and he was in full Klingon, armor, and he was decked out, and he was probably, I don't know if he was in high shoes, but he was easily 7 feet tall, and he was really wide. But he's having this just most pleasant conversation with these 2 little old ladies that if they were under 80, I would be surprised. And it was
They were terrified?
No, they were having the most just wonderfully,
that's very sweet,
wonderful conversation about the costume and why he does this. And I remember thinking, this is very surreal, but I love it. I love it that it's not, they're not turning their nose up at it.
Yeah,
This is cool.
when I went to that convention in 1984, it was really the first time where I felt like a normal person because I was just surrounded by hundreds of like-minded people from all walks of life who just share this love of something that I think not so much now, but back in the day was very much stigmatized, I feel.
Yeah, it was very much a niche thing.
Yeah, it was.
It was. You're like now people are, oh, I'm fans of all things sci-fi, but back then you were, and it was very segmented, because if you were a Star Trek fan, you didn't necessarily hang out with the Star Wars fans. If you were a Marvel guy, you didn't hang out with the DC guys.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and so
it's okay to like both. It's okay.
And now it's a lot more
tribalized. I call it tribalization.
Yeah.
It's because, sorry to interject, but it's because Marvel was so prolific that DC had to catch up and just saturate the whole market. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But and also the cons have changed. I mean, the kind of the people that are coming, it used to be mostly just middle-aged guys, or 20s to 40 guys. Now you see families.
Right.
People of all shapes, sizes, stripes, colors, creeds. It's It's a great.
It's like everybody's out of the closet, right?
yeah, and it's just, and there's a lot more acceptance of, oh, you like this, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I meet, and I meet so many wonderful people doing these various events around, and one of the coolest things of doing this, I've made like lifelong friends of people that I met doing a con, or we bonded over being writers, or we bonded over our love of whatever fandom, we happened to bond over. And that's just awesome. But I didn't get that growing up.
No,
because I didn't have other friends that liked that stuff.
Right.
And there was no internet then. So, it was you. And if your neighbors didn't like that stuff, you were just on your own. And that's kind of was that growing up. So seeing that now, it's wonderful. And I feel like part of this
evolution.
Yeah. It's like, oh, my people, And so, so I love it. And so, but there's been other things, and I'm sure if I thought on it a while, and that might be a question I don't think I've ever been asked before.
Here we go.
Yeah. And I won't say who. One time at a con, a celebrity, and I won't mention names, celebrity came up and says, she says, you don't look very happy. And she flashed me and says, there you go, smile. And that made my day.
Wow. Can you imagine?
Yes.
That was very kind of her, actually.
Yes, it made my day. Put me right up.
You know what? It might have made her day to a briefer extent.
Yeah.
You should have
gotten her phone number. Yeah, right. That might have been a missed opportunity. I want to ask you this, Bobby.
I just want to know who that actress was.
Yeah, I'm not
You're not going to tell us. He's a gentleman. He's a little bit Canadian, apparently.
I know, but I got to try. Come on, man.
Okay.
I still have to go to these things.
I want to take a guess. Sybil Danning.
No.
I've
never met.
Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah. So
Triple H, I think.
For me, I was kind of hoping it flashed in my mind. It was Bo Derek in her mid-50s.
I've never met Bo Derek either. Sorry.
Yeah, but even in the mid-50s, even mid-60s, she's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you this, Bobby, and we're coming up on an hour, so I guess we'll just truck along here. It's going great. If you could go back in time and meet your younger self, what advice would you give to yourself?
Okay, this one I have been asked before. I do like this
one. Shucks.
I would tell myself to focus.
Yes,
because there was a point where I had a plan, and my plan went like this instead of straight. And so I got off track. It took me a while to get back on track. I would also tell myself, this is one of my regrets, because when I was going to college and out of high school and into college, there was no do it yourself. You had to submit to publishers and agents and get hired.
Right.
So my focus was on that. Had I have had the crystal ball to see into the future, I would have realized I'm running a small business, and I would have learned and taken more business
Mm,
classes. I would have learned more
wow.
business
That's
stuff.
very hardcore.
Yes,
Yeah.
and because who knew at that, when I started all this, I'll just publish my own books. That was nobody did that unless if you did that, it was because you were unsuccessful, and they would end up being so much that nobody would buy them. Like who's going to buy a little paperback for 30, $40? And so, excuse me, so it became, I would have trusted, I would have learned more of that stuff. I also like to think back sometimes that on those days when I'm down on myself, or I'm that woe is me, my career is not where I want it to be, and you know, why can't I afford this thing I want or whatever? There's a part of me that remembers younger Bobby. There was a time when for young Bobby, success just meant getting published. And look how, what would 20-year-old Bobby think if he could see where I am today? First, he
Right.
would say, "God, you got old and fat." But 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 then he would say, then he would go, "I should exercise." But there was a time when had I as seen this as a future, I would have been over the moon.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, exactly parallel.
yeah,
Exactly.
because that success is a sliding scale. When you catch up to what you think success is, it moves out here.
You know.
Then you have to catch up again, and then it moves again.
But that's a good thing
So
because it keeps us
keep,
hungry.
keeps us hungry.
Stay
But
hungry.
there's but also when I was starting, we're very naive a lot of times when we start out,
Mm.
just because you're just thinking, your only thought is, I just want to write something that gets published. You're not thinking about taxes and,
That's
this
why
and that.
Alex Ritziner studied economics. He took
Yeah,
economics in college for that very same reason because he actually thought about the business
yeah,
aspect of how his life was going to go.
yeah. I wish, like I said,
That's
I
great.
wish I had. Because I've learned a lot of stuff from screwing stuff up.
Oh,
I
really?
make a mistake and then I have to fix it, and then so, okay, I'll learn something. I won't do that again.
Right.
So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. But yeah, young Bobby was a bit naive. He just assumed that and I blame this on movies and TV. If you ever see a writer in a movie or a TV show, they are incredibly wealthy, extremely popular, and they solve a few murders a year. And I've done none of those things. um, but naive Bobby thought, oh, you publish a book, you're set for life. You're going to travel the world, you're going to make $1 million, and I've traveled part of the world.
Right.
I haven't made $1 million, but but there's a lot of other perks to it. I mean, like I said, I get to talk to people all over the world. Um, well, like we're doing now. I mean, I get to do stuff like this. I get to talk to people all
And
over the
Bobby, in the
world.
very short period of time that I've met you, you absolutely feel and look and sound extremely comfortable in your own skin.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
Talking and
Way to
being
It
live.
personable are not an
took
issue with you, my friend.
took me it did take a while to get here.
Yeah.
When I was very shy when I was younger, and when I first started doing this, I was very shy, and it took some work to get over it.
Right.
I remember when I was writing Evil Ways in the '90s. I wrote it in the '90s. It took me 6 years to sell it after I finished it. So I was writing it in the '90s, and I decided to take some like non-credit nighttime classes at a local college, and we would write and take the stuff in, and we would present it to the teacher and the class. So we would sit and we would read in front of everybody, and I was so terrified that I'm gonna have a visual aid here. I would read like this
That's hilarious.
because I couldn't see anybody.
Right.
It couldn't get me messed up. There was this older lady who took the class, and we became friends. We talked a lot, and she was wonderful. She started sitting next to me, and so I would go and I would start reading, and she would take just her hand on my arm and would just start pushing the paper down.
That's funny.
And so just to get her to stop, I had to start reading, where I could look up at people. And that was really a very first step toward being able to look at people and talk. doing conventions for years has helped.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been doing it a while now, so yeah. Now people are like, God, I wish he would shut up.
No,
uh,
nobody's.
so
How do you get to do these conventions in the first place? Do they invite you, or do you reach out to them? Is it a little both?
it's a little both. I mean, when I first started, because nobody knew who I was, I would start and I would reach out to locals. I live in Georgia, and there are a lot of shows here. Like I said, we mentioned DragonCon, which is probably the biggest in the state. But we have small shows. Just yesterday, the day we're recording this, I did a library show.
Yeah, I
It was
saw
just
that.
yeah. So I do a lot of those. So when I first started, I would reach out to conventions and say, "Here's who I am." And this was back in the day when we were making photocopies of our comics and stapling them together ourselves and selling them for $1, you know. And some of the local one-day shows would say, "Sure, kid, come on, you know, come do the show." And so I remember doing shows when I was, you know, like I said, I was not a professional. I'm scribbling, you know, and making my own comics. But some of the shows, and there's a show called the Atlanta Comic Convention. So they do 4 one-day shows a year. They were one of the first that said, "No, come on, come on, kid. We'll give you a table and, you know, let you just come and have fun." And I still do those shows today, 30 some odd years later, because that was kind of the first boost of feeling like a professional, because you know you feel different when there's a table, when you're the guy sitting behind the
Right.
table.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, as because it's a different feeling from being the guy on the other side talking.
The difference. This is what I always tell people. The difference between being a fan and being a creator is the difference between living and existing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a very different feeling. And so, and then I learned from other people, you know, seeing the people that were doing the cons. I would look at other creators and I would go, okay, that guy is fantastic with his fans. What is he doing? And I would learn, I would
Oh,
study,
right. So you
and I
role
would go,
model.
yes, yes. It's like this, you know, one of the best, one I probably learned the most from was George Perez.
Oh, nice.
Watching George interact with his fans was an experience, and watching it from that perspective of how he did, and there were others as well. I mean, I've learned stuff from so many, but watching how he talked to people, how he interacted with people,
Yeah.
Treating everyone like they're your best friend.
yeah,
Basically.
how he comported himself, and how he conducted business, and how so many others could. I learned a lot that way, which has motivated me.
Yeah.
I've also learned things from seeing people go, "Ooh, I don't want to be like that guy,"
Right.
Yeah.
because I have seen some that were like not necessarily bad, but that's not me. I'm not, you know, I'm not a hard sale guy. You know, you see those guys at cons that are like carnival barkers, you know.
Or they're charging for autographs. I find that very
Yeah,
distasteful. I mean, it's
yeah,
their
and
business, but I find it completely baffling. Like, what a great way to alienate people.
yeah, but yeah, it's become a big business. Like when I first started doing cons, that's not where that were the people that weren't getting the regular gigs were there, and now it's, you know, I've talked to actors who have said, I turned down a movie role to be at this convention because I'll make more doing the convention than I will doing the movie.
That's great.
And so, yeah, so it's become big business. And yes, the actors are pretty much at the top of the totem pole.
Yeah.
As an indie author, I'm way,
Yeah.
but it's
But
it
you're
is
still part of it, and that's
Yeah,
part of
am
the
still
journey.
right. I am still.
And
I'm
you're
still.
still on that journey.
That's the main draw. That's what's going to bring the people.
Well, it's, you know
Yeah.
what? It's relevancy. It's the journey is relevancy. It's you wake up every day, you're manifesting
Yeah,
what you're
and I've
living.
been doing it, and I've been doing it a long time, and
Yeah.
people do notice that.
Oh yeah.
I have sold books before at shows because somebody comes up and goes, you know, I see you at these things all the time. I should come see what you do.
Yeah.
And so people do, and there are people, like I said, at some shows, like the big shows, at DragonCon once a year, there is a handful of people that I only see at that show every year. They come up to my table and we catch up. Some will come up and go, "What have you put out since last year?" And they'll go, "Great, I'll take those."
Nice.
And so, yeah, so you've done that. There's people I see, and then there's other people I see on the con circuit all the time. Like I did this library show yesterday. There were people there that were at the show I was at the weekend before.
Cool.
So there are people you see on a regular basis. There are some you don't. But it's a great sense of community, I think. I think creators, there's a great creative sense of community.
Yeah, it's an incredible. It's a synergy of like-minded, talented people going through various synonymous journeys along
And
the same
yeah,
journey.
and very helpful. I
Yeah.
mean, I've met other creators who, if I had a question about something, I could ask, and they're not like, "Oh, go away, kid, you bug me." They're like, "Oh yeah, sure, this is," and I try to do that for people as well,
That's the question I have for you. You just a good segue. What's the best piece of advice that you've gotten from a professional writer that you met at one of these conventions? Like, did you meet Marv Wolfman?
I met Marv Wolfman. Yes, I have met
That
Marv
was
Wolfman.
amazing.
Yes, that was really cool. A writer who I became friends with later. I met a writer who impressed upon me the urgency of learning how to promote and market my own work. And she gave me some great advice about, she said something to me that really stuck, was like, who cares more about your book than you? So who's going to speak about your book with more passion than you?
Right.
Learn to talk about your book. Promoting is not bragging.
No.
And that stuck with me. And I learned.
It's storytelling.
Yes, I've taught myself how to promote and how to get out there. And because there's more to promotion. Like a lot of people think, oh, promotion means buy my book. I'm trying to sell you my book. And to a point, that's true, but there's promotion without active selling. Like this, I consider what we're doing now, this is part of my promotion. When this comes out, I'm going to go, hey, check me out on the podcast. And people will, and I haven't.
Too. We're all helping each other.
Yeah, and at no point have we said, hey, buy this book. Right. But there are book covers in the back. We've talked about snow. If snow sounds interesting, they might check it out.
There you go.
So these are all part of things.
And we've talked about Lee Hacklin.
Exactly.
With Johnny's books.
So you're doing things to put information. And I tell you what, I like what John does with the how he posts them online, because he's just like, here's something for you to read. He's not even going, I want to sell you something. He just goes, I just want to give you a story to read.
I love getting feedback from people, even the negative feedback. It's like, one person posted cringeworthy about one of my excerpts, and I just wrote back, hey, well, at least thanks for reading it. Thanks for taking the time to read it. You didn't like
but
it,
but you learn things from that. You learn what people are thinking about it, or is something, because we kind of get blinders on sometimes when we're writing these things. Yeah. And something that might not make sense to readers makes sense to me, because my brain is filling in the stuff I forgot to actually write.
Yeah.
And so, getting the feedback, one of the coolest things, and you've probably run into this, John, when someone comes up and says, oh my God, I love this thing you wrote, or I bought this book, can you sign it? I mean, as cool as it is when people come up and buy a book from me at a convention and I sign it, some of the really coolest moments is when somebody came to a convention with a book they bought elsewhere for me to sign. That takes effort. You had to put that on a plane or in a car. You had to bring it with you. You had to go look me up. Yeah, you had to find out where I was going to be. That's and that's one of those kind of get you. It's like, I feel so. Wow, I feel good. I feel
that way anytime all I need from you is to hear someone say the name of my character.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time that happened, I got goosebumps. It's like I made an impact in the world. I created something that will outlive me.
Yeah, or you get recognized. Someone recognizes you somewhere. I remember a funny one. I got a check one time from a publisher, and so I go to the bank to deposit the check, and the lady looks at it. My name's on it. And obviously, and she goes, "Are you any relation to the writer?"
Wow! Like, you can't put a price on that. There's no amount of money in the world that comes anywhere near the feeling that such an acknowledgement.
Yeah, or like I do. We talked about the art earlier. We have the thing. I guess Free Comic Book, does Free Comic Book Day
Yeah,
happen?
in May, every May.
Yeah, first weekend in May. So Free Comic Book Day, I'm usually at a comic shop on Free Comic Book Day doing free sketches. I'll do free sketches all day.
That's great.
Used to do them just for kids. I'll do them for whoever comes up, but I do free sketches. Oh, my hands hurt when it's over, but I love it. It's fun. And so I was just telling this story yesterday too. It's like there was this one I did one year, and I remember, I'm terrible with names, so this is how memorable it was that I remember the kid's name. But there was this little boy named Alex, and it was his birthday, and he was 5. It was his 5th birthday, and so the family had him in there. They were getting free comics. I was doing a sketch. He had a Deadpool Funko Pop figure, and he wanted me to draw his Deadpool Funko Pop figure. I didn't bother to ask what a 5-year-old knows about Deadpool, but yeah.
It's a restricted film, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Well, this was even before the movie. Yeah.
Just if I may interject for a second, Ryan Reynolds went to the same high school that Paul and I went to.
Yeah.
Very
Kelowna.
nice.
Yeah. Anyway, go on. Just wanted to throw that in.
Oh no, that's a cool fact.
It is, right?
Johnny's never been. Listen. He shamelessly promotes himself at every possible opportunity.
Hey, you know what? If it's a cool fact, you have to put that out there.
Yeah, it is a cool fact.
Yeah, but I remember this kid's thing because I remember putting on because as the writer in me can't just draw a picture without some kind of them saying something. And so I put like, from this day forward, you shall be known as Alex Poole. And that's how I remember his name.
That's awesome.
Anyways, I give him the drawing. He says thank you. Him and his parents go on their way. 3 or 4 days later, because I was business cards. I was giving business cards to people with my Facebook and email and all that stuff on them. And 3 or 4 days later, I get an email, and it's from Alex's mother. And she's like, I just wanted to write and say thank you for this drawing. She says, you may remember it was his birthday, and we went all out. My husband and I, we went all out. There's party favors, balloons, and this and that. And we spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And all my son could talk about was this little free sketch you did for him. And so we had to frame it. It's hanging in his room. But she says, I just want to thank you. You made my son's birthday memorable.
Yeah.
And those are the
moments. He'll have that for the rest of his life.
Yeah. And me too. You can't put a price tag on that feeling.
But it's funny how you say that, Bobby, and I think we'll end up the episode on that note, in that we cannot put anything more than what we had no expectations on this, and honestly, this has been a fantastic episode.
I've had fun.
It's been very enjoyable. There's been a lot of laughter. Johnny, nice job on the lead. And Bobby, thank you kindly for taking time out of your day to share this with us, because it means a lot to many people, but it means a lot more to my co-host with the most, Mr. John Leister, who is a very talented writer, and any way we can get someone else's experience on, and hopefully he can find a way to take
it. Right. We're good at whatever it is that we're good at. We're good at. We should be proud of it.
Right.
Yeah, but it was very enjoyable, and hopefully people enjoyed it, and just want to say thank you for it. We're going to pack it in because I've got to go do some errands and cook dinner for the wifey, but it's been a fantastic hour and going on 14 minutes. And Johnny, is there anything you have to say before we go?
Yeah. Did you bring a book? Paul and I usually bring whatever we're reading. I picked this up at the library the other day. Bobby, are you familiar with this author, Ted Bell?
I am not.
He's a British author. He writes a series about a spy named Alex Hawke. These books are probably very similar to the way that you write. Really fun, lots of action, lots of humor, lots of social commentary, a little bit of everything. And so that's what I'm reading right now, Seahawk by Alex Bell.
Trying to think if I got something handy. I've got something here. I picked this up today. I taught a class last year at one of the Centers for the Arts, like a how to create comics thing, and one of the girls that was in there was taking the class, who mentioned she wanted to do a cartoon about cats. She loved cats, and she wanted to do a comic strip about cats. And I went into the day to the art center to drop off some stuff, and she was doing a book signing for her first comic
Oh, wow.
And so I got a copy of it. So I was very proud that I inspired a little bit.
That's
Her to
nice.
help. Yeah.
That's nice.
Do you have a book, Paul?
I do. This is a book Eddie Romagnoli and Danny Romagnoli bought. I brought it up in one of our previous episodes. I still haven't read it.
They're mutual
And
friends of ours, Bobby.
yeah, we grew
Nice.
up. We met in 1975 in Kitsilano. And this is called The Full Fee Agent. And unlike what's going on in America, or maybe similar,
We
this
love
is this is how to stack the odds in your favor as a
Mhm.
real estate professional. I've been in real estate for 21 years,
Gotcha.
and I'm a landlord. I'm a realtor. I'm an investor. And essentially, when your oldest and closest friends give you a book like this, they see that you've done almost 60 episodes on your YouTube channel, and they're thinking, don't forget about how it all started with your real estate career. You want to give it one
Mhm.
last go before packing it in. So I feel that's they.
Always be closing.
Yeah, it's just, I just turned 60, and I just feel that I don't feel 60. I don't look 60. I
Mhm.
don't act 60. Definitely, that's what my wife says. But that's not stopping me from the growth and potential that I can still offer today, and many different types of things. And I like the idea of being a part of a lot of things, and it gives me the creative endeavor. And 15 years I've been talking about putting this channel together, and Johnny helped me as a co-host when I reached out to him, because I thought he'd be the perfect co-host. And here we are 35 episodes later, probably about 43, but
We're just
we
getting
had
warmed up.
we had technical difficulties on a couple of those. And then the second iteration with the basketball allowed me to, I'm a hoop junkie, hence my nickname. I am addicted to basketball. I've been addicted to basketball in my life. I will be until my last breath. I am the hardest Canadian, white, old, fat. I'm not even that fat. I've lost like 40 pounds, but hoop junkie. And it's not about age. It's
Right.
this whole ageism, this whole thing about all of us guys in our late 50s,
That's a relic
early
philosophy.
60s. We have an opportunity to enjoy success and
I always tell
manifest
people
that.
the greatest gift that we have in life is the present.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Unintended.
And,
And
and,
and
and
I think creativity keeps you feeling young.
yeah,
You
well, I
know.
mean, it's
Yeah.
honestly, it's really nice to be able to, you guys talk about writing, and my writing is the Canadian Bro Show. And being a part of this, and enjoying the journey of others that are in
Mhm.
similar sort of manifestations and experiences, and to end this up at an hour and 18 minutes, this has been far better than I expected, and I didn't have any expectations, which is probably a good idea, but honestly I was excited about it, and it's been a fantastic episode. I thank you again, Bobby, for
Thanks,
joining
Bobby.
us. and
My
and
pleasure.
I
Johnny,
have a pun before we go. I have a
you have a
pun.
pun. Johnny likes to do a pun before we finish up, Bobby.
Okay, Bobby, hang on to your seat. Next time you go camping, don't forget your tranquilizer gun. There's safety in numb bears. Thank you.
All right, everybody, listen.
Thank
Bobby,
you.
thanks again. It was a pleasure
My
to meet you, sir.
my pleasure. This was
And
fun.
Go on and
Thanks for having
prosper.
me. Yeah.
honestly, I think we should do another show in the near future, and maybe do a follow up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime.
Okay,
This is
cool.
fun.
Thank you so much, Bobby.
As you guys notice, I have no problem talking.
You
Yeah,
know, you're actually,
and
you're
neither do we. So,
actually
listen, everybody, thank you for joining us.
Good
Episode
luck
35.
on tour.
Episode 35, Johnny, as we're trying to cast out, because my wife's waiting for me to help her do some stuff and cook her dinner. This is the Canadian Bro Show. My name is Paul Bale. I'm the founder and host. I'm with my co-host at the most, an old friend of over 50 years, Johnny Leister. We've just enjoyed an incredible 90 plus minutes with the amazingly talented and prolific Bobby Nash, a fantastic writer, an effervescent spirit, and somebody that we'd like to have back on the show. It was a
Where
lot
can
of
people
fun.
get your books, Bobby? Do you want to talk about your website a little bit before we go?
Well, no, I'm just
Right?
going to wrap up, Johnny.
Okay, sorry,
If you
I'm
keep
sorry.
on stopping interjection and interrupting, maybe I can. Hello, bro. Johnny has only half one ear, so sometimes it's, anyways. But here we go. But at the end of the day, we're going to close this up. It's been incredible. If you're a writer, if you are an artist, an actor, somebody that enjoys film, comics, this is an episode that you'll certainly enjoy because I did, and I know Johnny did, and Bobby said he did. So thanks again, everybody. If you enjoy this type of content, as you've been following the ticker, if you've been noticing, please subscribe, like, comment, share. And we'll see you next week. We do an episode once a week with all things Canadian, or most things Canadian. We do one on all basketball with Hoop Junkies Pauly and Raleigh, and the third iteration of the Canadian Bro Show is going to be all Canadian real estate with Paul Bale and guests, which is what I do in my real job. But in the meantime, thanks again, everybody. I'm going to shut down the recording, and peace, love, and happiness. Be kind out there. It's free.
Bye. Cheers.
Bye.